Hello, how are you? I hope you're good. I know that August is fastly approaching, and you might be struggling with one, two, or a couple of the Orilium prompts. So, we do have threads on Twitter where I ask for a specific, a little bit trickier prompt, and people suggest books they know fit. And that is probably a much better resource than this. But if you wanted everything in kind of one place and video is just easier for you, this is going to be a little bit of a rapid fire suggestions for some prompts. I try to keep to the books that I know for a fact fit, but I definitely have used Google a lot and a couple of the prompts from Twitter that we did already discuss, which I think is only like 3 at this point. But in case this is useful, I thought we're gonna do a little pew 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 rapid fire one. So I know I needed help with a couple and found the threads useful. So because there are so many prompts, I will not be going into depth on any of these books, but of course you can look onto Goodreads or any other website that talks about these books, or chat down in the comments below if you have any specific questions about the themes, and maybe the people watching will also go into the comments and check if any questions were raised. We can do this together, basically. We're only focusing on the ones that are specific, but there are still quite a few. I'm releasing my TBR after this video, so you're gonna be able to see that later. That kind of covers everything, and we can just go on and chat about some viable options for some prompts. So one of the prompts asks you to pick a book from someone else's worst book of the year list. I will link mine down below if you fancy watching that, because I do have some pretty good options. Not even like the disappointing books for me. I even still had very good points for like advantages of those books. Then we have a book with an animal familiar. A couple of options for these as Bone Shard Daughter. I personally really like this book. It was very quick. I've also found this tweet under our discussion which mentions a lot of the options as well. Another one is Assassin's Apprentice. Six Crimson Cranes was also mentioned quite a bit. And of course the Spellslinger series. For a raven on the cover or in the title, we of course have the Raven Boys. An Enchantment of Ravens, Nevermore, and Six of Crows as well, because I know crows and ravens are not the same, but it is really hard to tell the difference. So we're gonna group them together, make them a little friendly. For the hare, we have Bunny, the Empress of Salt and Fortune. The second book to Annihilation, which is called Authority. Fairly new release called Our Crooked Hearts. And another option would be Wonderland. For archers or rangers, we have, of course, The Lord of the Rings, The Hunger Games, if you fancy a reread. A lot of you guys would have read that before. But also Sherwood, Blade itself was mentioned, The Graceling, or An Arrow to the Moon, as well as Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Multiple people on the covers, not necessarily a very hard one, but I thought I'll mention a couple of options here either way. So anything with 2 people, so a lot of romance books, or a comic like Heartstopper, Kings of the Wild, any of the Brown sister romance books. We Were Liars, just because how short it is as well. Delilah Green, Winter's Orbit, or honestly, majority of the manga books. Necromancy themes was definitely one that I personally needed some guidance with, and the Twitter thread for this already does exist. So we have anything Buffy or anything iZombie, Raven Boys again, but also Cemetery Boys, Vespertine, House of Hollow, Gideon the Ninth, obviously, Sabriel, and Give the Dark My Love. For the bone on the cover or bone in the title, we have The Bone Season, The Lovely Bones, and definitely check content warnings for all of the books, but specifically this one. Bone Shard Daughter, Kingdom of the Wicked, If We Were Villains, Nettle and Bone, and The Hollow Places. The sea setting books. Anything piracy would obviously fit here as well, but we have House of Salt and Sorrow, Fable, Wicked Deep, Daughter of the Pirate King. Darkest Shade of Magic to an extent is more so in, I think, the second book rather than the first, but as a series, it does have a little bit of that. On a similar note, Lies of Locke Lamora would also have a little bit of that in the second book. House of the Cerulean Sea, The Starless Sea, Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, a lot of sea action. The Deep, or Into the Drowning Deep as well, if you're looking for some horror options. These Rebel Waves, or A Song Below Water. For some artificial intelligence options, we have Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, of course, the staple. Wasn't my favorite, so also could fit into your worst off. I don't know if it actually made an appearance in one of the years, but I would put it there, so you know, if you want to read that. We have Illuminae, or the Murderbot series, Skyward, Ancillary Justice, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, We Are Legion, Summer Frost, especially good of an option for someone who doesn't really want to read much of AI or doesn't have a lot of experience, because it is an extremely short story and it still counts. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Clara and the Sun. For some comics, mangas, graphic novels, anything visual, this could be a whole separate video, but I will mention a couple that I think are approachable for various readers. First, I would like to recommend the Fairest comics. These are your fairy tales reimagined, and it is a subcategory kind of the Fable series, and I just think it's been many years since I've read them, but I really enjoyed them. Obviously, Heartstopper, we already mentioned it in another category, but also maybe you're an Avatar fan, and Avatar does have comics and graphic novel collections, so that is a great option if you're not really into manga or graphic novels otherwise, but you are a fan of the world, so you would probably still have a great time. The Adventure Zone would be for the D&D fans, and for a manga recommendation, I'm actually gonna go with I Hear the Sunspot, because it is amazing and people need to read it. Next category is cozy reads, which was a little bit hard to curate a list for because it will all just depend on your personal definition of cozy. For someone, that could literally be a murder mystery. For some other people, it might be a low-key fantasy. For others, it's a romance. It really depends. But these are just some suggestions that I think would likely fit a cozy category. So again, House in the Cerulean Sea. Then we have Legends and Lattes. A Sound to the Wildborn. I'm pretty sure that's it. Thursday Murder Club. You Should See Me in the Crown. And Every Day the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. A different cozy experience will make you cry. You have been warned. A book featuring a betrayal. When making this list, I realized that most of YA staples actually would fall into this category. So if you are missing any or you would like to reread something, they will most likely have some type of betrayal. So we do have 1984 on the list, but followed by The Cruel Prince, ACOTAR, Shadow and Bone, Strange the Dreamer, Six of Crows. You kind of get the gist here. But if you do want something a bit more adult-leaning, there's also The Atlas Six, Game of Thrones, Mexican Gothic, The Song of Achilles, or most mythology, most likely. But then going back to some YA, we have Children of Blood and Bone, Caraval, Warcross, Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Moving on to some desert setting, of course, we're gonna start with Dune. If someone does pick Dune for their readathon read, hat off to you. I could never, because it is long and dense. But we also have The City of Brass, Rebel of the Sand, The Alchemist, The Wrath and the Dawn, We Hunt the Flame, An Ember in the Ashes, Stardust Thief, and I believe Binti. Could be wrong, but I think to an extent. And next stop is time travel. So we of course have Kindred, Dark Matter, who's surprised to see that on the list, same as Recursion. This Is How You Lose a Time War, The Psychology of Time Travel. If you're looking for a little bit like murder mystery vibes, there is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Outlander, Timeline, Invictus, and The Air Affair. A couple of suggestions for a single object as the main focus on the cover, although I am not gonna make a long list for this one because I think it is fun going through your shelves and checking. But as I said, we have The Earthling, Middle Game, these versions of Red Rising, Hamnet, because a single letter is still an object, Norse mythology, invisible planets, and humans. For anatomy, I actually will probably need a lot of help from Twitter, and we have not had that yet, but the only book that I can really think of is Anatomy: A Love Story. Word in the title is actually fairly easy to find because you just go onto Goodreads and put in anatomy, and then a whole list of books will be right in front of you. But for good ones, probably we'll come back to Twitter for this one because it's definitely one of the trickiest ones. But I hope this was somewhat useful. Again, as I said, I didn't go into detail because we're just mentioning a lot of books and it would take a very, very long time if we did mention specifics, but I hope this was somewhat helpful. Let me know if your absolute favorite book would actually fit into some of these categories, and then let everyone know down below because chances are they might enjoy it as well. But yeah, I think that's everything. I'm gonna go skedoodle, continue working on my own TBR, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye!
There's a lot to see, a lot to do. Recently I've realized I like doing it all with you.